What's good? What's good? What's good? NBA YouTube. I'm back. It's your boy Ross with another episode of The Rock Never Stops. Coming to you with more NBA basketball content. This is a video that I've been kind of excited about doing since the last one. Honestly, I came up with this list of the most improved players at each position for this upcoming season. And honestly, as I started to do the list, I began to get more and more hyped about it. So I'm excited. I hope you enjoy the video. If you do, like, subscribe, comment. I definitely respond to it. For those who already put replies, you already know I respond back and forth, and we can keep going as long as you want. But without further ado, this is my NBA 2021-2022 NBA season most improved list. So kicking it off, I'm actually going to start with the centers. This dude has been waiting for his moment to shine since he was at Duke. And I'm talking about Wendell Carter Jr. If you don't know his story, he first got recruited to Duke and signed with them early. But when he signed with Duke, he specifically asked them, people don't really know this, that he said, "Are you recruiting any other big men? Because I don't want to be someplace where I'm competing for minutes. I want to be someplace where I could shine and really show what I could do." Because he was dominant throughout his high school tenure. He was one of the top recruits. Duke said, "Nope, it's just you." But then Marvin Bagley III decided to reclassify, and Duke ended up going after him, brought him in. The next thing you know, he's splitting minutes with Marvin Bagley. And so he kind of got outshined because Marvin Bagley was this freak of an athlete, wowed everybody, and Wendell Carter kind of got overlooked. Now, scouts still knew what he could do, and so he did get drafted pretty high still. But had he been on a team that was just his, he might have went even higher because honestly, he's like Al Horford, but with more offensive initiative. Like, he can get that ball, he can shoot it. He came in as a rookie, able to shoot it. But unfortunately, he got drafted by the Chicago Bulls. And you already know who they had coaching, Jim Boylan. And oh my goodness, Jim Boylan, man, this coach was so trash. Like, nobody liked him. Like, when the entire team don't like the coach and they tell you and they make it clear, they rolling their eyes at him in huddles. They don't listen to him. They tune him out. He's out there trying to have them run liners and crazy practices late at night. And they're like, "What are we doing, man? Like, you can't even figure out your stuff. Why are you out here trying to run us because you can't do your job as a coach?" Anyways, he was in a terrible position in Chicago. Chicago eventually fires Jim Boylan, but then they decided to go after an all-star center, which I'm not mad at all, because Wendell Carter was struggling with injuries a little bit. So they bring in Nikola Vucevic. But then guess who comes in? Wendell Carter Jr. lands in Orlando, where they're now rebuilding. And if you saw last season, ironically, Mo Bamba, who got drafted right behind Wendell Carter Jr., literally got pushed to the bench as soon as Wendell Carter Jr. arrived. And that shows you something. That shows that Orlando already know what they have in Wendell Carter Jr. He's physically ready for the NBA grind, at least strength-wise, more so than Mo Bamba. He's also more refined in his defensive rotations, his ability to guard man-to-man, and as a help defender, great weak side and on-ball shot blocker. It kind of reminds me of a young Elton Brand. Not quite as explosive, but has that strength and that length combination plus touch that he's able to score in a lot of different ways. Isaiah Stewart is a very similar player as well. But then now moving on to our power forwards. This guy is actually in the same draft, Jaren Jackson Jr. This is probably going to go down as one of the great big man drafts in NBA history, because not only did you get Mo Bamba, not only did you get Wendell Carter Jr., you also got Jaren Jackson Jr., Marvin Bagley III, and DeAndre Ayton, all in the lottery. So if you got a big man, a center in this draft, you probably came out with a future starter and potential all-star. But I digress. Back to the player that I'm highlighting here, Jaren Jackson Jr. This guy kind of reminds me of like a Rasheed Wallace 2.0. He's long, athletic, real nimble, great shooting touch. This guy was shooting threes, even though it's an awkward form, but he knocks it down. And with a 7'4" wingspan, great agility, he can take you off the dribble, dunk on you, block shots, finish around the rim with great touch. But even though he struggled with a little bit of injuries, I think it was good that the Memphis Grizzlies took the long-term approach when he slightly tore his meniscus, and they were like, "Look, we're gonna rest you, we're gonna Joel Embiid you, we're gonna Ben Simmons you, we're gonna Blake Griffin you, and we're gonna let you rest to get strong so that you can have a long career." And since then, when he came back last season, you could see him slowly building up. He was slowly getting going, and by the time the playoffs came, you're like, man, when this guy gets to 100%, teamed up with John Morant, yo, he's gonna be killing the game, like for real, like killing. And that's where we leave off into this coming season. Jaren Jackson Jr. is gonna be killing. He's going to be one of those guys. Honestly, I think he's going to be the number one scoring option for them. Honestly, I don't think John Morant's going to be scoring 20 plus points a game because I don't really think he's that type of a point guard. He's far more Chris Paul than he is like Russell Westbrook, even though he's got Russell Westbrook athleticism. But right now, I see John Morant taking a step back, setting up Desmond Bain as a highlighted scoring option because he's a dead eye shooter, really good scorer. If you saw him at the end of last season, he was their best shooter. If you saw him in Summer League, you're like, whoa, this dude got some serious flame throwing shooting on him. And he's physically strong. And then you got Jaren Jackson Jr. I think John Morant's going to just set those two guys up, run a lot of pick and rolls, kick outs, hitting Bane off of screens, letting Jaren Jackson work in the post. And most importantly, with a lot of these guys, especially Jaren Jackson Jr. and Wendell Carter Jr., it's a contract year. And you know what that means. It's make up or break up. Get that money, or you're going to be searching probably for another team on some minimum deal. This is the moment where they got to show everything they got. And so I expect them to play a lot of minutes. I expect them to put up big numbers. And I expect them to go hard the whole season. Expect both of them to be most improved player of the year candidates. But then comes the small forward position. And most of y'all are probably already guessing who it is, what junior that I'm talking about. Michael Porter Jr., also known as MPJ, also known as Mama There Goes That Man, also known as a 6'10 Klay Thompson, close to 6'11, also known as he put it, a mix between Kevin Durant and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Probably one of the best shooters, definitely one of the best shooters with his size that the NBA has ever seen. He's putting up Klay Thompson type shooting numbers at 6'10 and a half with shoes on, close to 6'11. Plus, he's got 35, close to 40-inch vertical. I mean, this dude is all world when it comes to what he does best, which is shoot and play athletically above the rim. But this is why I think he's probably one of the best candidates to win that Most Improved Player of the Year trophy. Is because he's playing on not just a winning team, the Denver Nuggets, but he's already solidified within this offensive system, proven himself in the playoffs 2 years in a row from the bubble to last season. And he's playing with an unselfish superstar in Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic has no problem with deferring and letting Michael Porter Jr. get 18 to 25 shots a game because he's going to shoot over 50%. He's going to hit a bunch of threes, and they're still going to win. And so I see Michael Porter Jr. getting big time minutes. I see him getting huge scoring outbursts and looking like an all-star. And likely, I think he's going to end up probably in the running 1 or 2 in the Most Improved Player of the Year award. But that takes me to the shooting guard position. In the shooting guard position, I got Gary Trent Jr. My man, 100 grand. Yo, he came in unheralded out of Duke. And a lot of these blue blood schools that everybody's like, everybody needs to go to, they got these great programs. I don't know. There'd be some top recruits who don't really develop. And Gary Trent Jr. definitely got overshadowed when he was at Duke. Ended up, I'm not sure if he got undrafted or if it was the second round, but it went way lower than what he should have coming out of high school, where he was one of the top recruits. And he ends up in Portland fighting his way onto the roster and eventually getting an opportunity where in the bubble, he's literally their best wing defender on that team. You got CJ McCollum is ailing, he's got a bad back, and Gary Trent Jr.'s shooting and defense makes him invaluable. And next thing you know, he's getting heavy minutes, heavy minutes. But last season, even though he's having a great year, the Portland Trailblazers realized they weren't going to be able to re-sign him because they were going to have to go way over the luxury tax. They already gave out max contracts to Damian Lillard. Plus, they gave him that super max deal to keep him there even longer recently. Then they got CJ McCollum on a huge contract. They still got Yusuf Nurkic on somewhat of a team-friendly but still a big contract. And they got a lot of other guys. And so they traded him for Norman Powell. And so now you have Gary Trent Jr. in Toronto. Even though they were kind of tanking by the end of the season, Gary Trent Jr. averaged around 16 points a game. Not that efficiently, but he wasn't really playing with the rest of the starters. So he had to just kind of chuck it. And that's what he did. But what he showed you was that he could put up numbers when you give him the ball. And we kind of knew that, but this was the first time we're seeing him play without any boundaries. He had a green light. It was going to be built around him and Malachi Flynn. And they were like, look, go and show us what you can do. And he did. He got re-signed this offseason. And now he's coming into a training camp where he's going to be playing next to Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby. Eventually, Pascal Siakam is going to return, Kim Birch. They got Precious Achiuwa, Scotty Barnes, Malachi Flynn, like I mentioned earlier, off the bench. They're going to have a team that needs his expertise, and the veterans are going to make it easy on him. They're going to hit him off the screens. Nick Nurse is going to have plenty of plays ran for him. And his perimeter defense, at the shooting guard position, his size and physicality, it's going to be hard for Nick Nurse to take him off the court. Now, this leaves us with my prediction for the future Most Improved Player of the Year award. Our point guard in Houston, Kevin Porter Jr. Kevin Porter Jr. This dude already dropped 50. When he got traded from Cleveland, I think it was the best thing for him. Not because he was going to blow up in Cleveland. I don't think that was going to happen at all. It was a small town, really didn't have the structure around him. He had guys in front of him, Colin Sexton, Darius Garland. He wasn't really going to get playing time like that. But then when he gets traded, it was a wake-up call. It kind of shook him. It was like, yo, you better get it together or you're going to be like J.R. Smith, doing your Henny thing somewhere else, but not in the NBA. And all of a sudden, he's like, you know what? Bet. Say less. Just give me some minutes. And that's what they did. They put him on the G League team, and he murdered the G League. I mean, just dominated the G League. And then when he got his chance, him and Kenyon Martin Jr., who could have also been a candidate, but small forward, Michael Porter Jr., not going to take his spot. Soon as they hit the ground in Houston with the NBA team, they didn't slow down one bit. Kevin Porter Jr. dropped 50, dropping triple doubles, absolutely dominating the competition. Not to mention, who did he drop 50 on? The eventual NBA champions, Milwaukee Bucks, against one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA, Drew Holiday. You can't tell this boy nothing right now. And now that John Wall and the Houston Rockets have agreed to part ways, they have parted the sea. And they've been like, it's your world, it's your team, Kevin Porter Jr., here's the rock, here's the keys to the city, go do your thing. And so that's who I got winning the Most Improved Player of the Year award, Kevin Porter Jr. That's my squad, my all-NBA Most Improved squad. Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., Michael Porter Jr., Jaren Jackson Jr., Wendell Carter Jr. This is a junior squad that's coming up. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Stay tuned. If you got a fantasy roster, definitely pick these dudes up. I might do a video for fantasy leagues. Let me know if you want me to, if you made it to the end. Otherwise, if you like the video, subscribe. I'm coming to you more with some NBA content for my favorite thing about your favorite NBA team coming up, Charlotte Hornets. I'll be putting out that video next, potentially tonight. All right. Like, subscribe, comment. I'll holla at you. Peace.